Discover the incredible moment a single dad janitor exposed a hidden trap shocking the CEO forever. Jake wiped sweat from his brow as he maneuvered the long handle of the mop across the polished floor of the skyscraper. The silence enveloped him like a heavy blanket, broken only by the echoes of his own footsteps. He inhaled the sterile scent of cleaning products mixed with desperation, a reminder of everything he sacrificed for Emma. Every swipe of the mop felt like a reminder of his relentless struggle to build a better life for her. Yet there was something deeper stirring within him, a growing unrest about what lay beyond the glass walls he scrubbed daily. As he moved between floors, Jake began to notice a pattern: executives huddled in hushed tones, their conversations laced with tension. Was it the weight of uncertainty or just another late-night strategy session? He could hear snippets of phrases like financial discrepancies and termination of staff. Each time they spoke, Jake's skin prickled with unease. Closer inspection revealed documents left exposed in conference rooms, financial reports with alarming figures he couldn't ignore. The CEO's extravagant lifestyle felt like an indictment against the hardworking men and women relying on them. His heart ached for the clean slate he wished to offer Emma, free from the burden of corporate greed. But week after week, as he collected stray cups and crumbs, it became hard to separate his duty as a father from his newfound burden as an observer of deception. Jake sometimes felt like a ghost wandering through a world that moved on regardless of his prying eyes. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's mind raced, turning over the implications of what he might now uncover. Should he cast away his anonymity, risking everything for integrity? The thought gnawed at him like a bitter aftertaste. The fear of losing his job, the very means to provide for Emma, clashed fiercely against the idea of standing by and preserving the status quo. Every shift became a tightrope walk between what he hoped Emma could become and the ever-looming consequences of speaking out. Then, on a particularly ominous night, he felt a shift in the air as he leaned against the wall outside the CEO's office. A sharp voice broke through the darkness. It was Jesse, a corporate attorney whose kindness and intelligence struck a chord with him. Their conversations had turned into quiet camaraderie, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that exposing the lies could unravel the life he fought so hard to maintain. As the day of reckoning drew near, Jake felt a crushing wave of doubt wash over him. What if he did it? What if he stepped up during that board meeting? The very prospect sent his heart racing, drumming painfully against his ribs. He envisioned the faces of the executives' mocking expressions, disbelief, hostile accusations. Sweat dripped from his brow as he clutched the edge of the mop handle tighter, the weight of potential ruin heavier than ever. In that moment, standing at the crossroads, he questioned if he could truly bear the consequences of his integrity. The tension hung thick in the air, thick enough to choke on as Jake's mind spiraled, caught in the vice grip of uncertainty and determination. As the clock ticked down, he felt the pull as fear swirled around him, echoing the chaos ingrained in the very structure he maintained by night. A visceral dread anchored him to the ground even as dreams of a brighter future for Emma fought to take wing. What awaited him was a precipice, and the choice to leap or to hold back loomed ever closer, casting shadows long into the night. Jake stood alone in the deserted hallway, the silence amplifying the conflicting emotions roiling within him. He felt the mop handle grow heavy, not just with the weight of the task but with the enormity of the decisions looming on the horizon. The echoes of whispered conversations from the office felt like chains, anchoring him to an unsteady place of doubt and fear. His heart raced with anticipation, each palpitation propelling him closer to a crucial moment he could no longer postpone. He spent countless hours polishing the floors and cleaning surfaces, pretending to be invisible amidst the opulence and arrogance of the executives above him. Yet now, this perceived anonymity felt like a facade he was unwillingly wearing. Was he just another cog in the machine of corporate deceit? Or could he be the catalyst for change, however small? In the stillness of the night, the ceiling lights flickered, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance mockingly around him. The thought of confronting the executives gnawed at his resolve, paralyzing him with visions of their disdain. But then another image surfaced: Emma's face, beaming with the promise of a brighter future. Why should his daughter have to grow up in a world marred by corruption? He had witnessed firsthand the desperation in the eyes of those around him, the silent struggle of his colleagues who had families to provide for, just like he did. With each financial report he glimpsed, he felt a growing sense of urgency, a responsibility to act, to awaken from the stasis he allowed himself to settle into, even as the stakes grew dangerously high. The memory of his conversations with Jessie pierced through the chaos in his mind. Her passionate beliefs in justice and accountability ignited a spark within him he thought long extinguished. She had pressed him to think deeper, to recognize his worth beyond the blue uniform and the janitor's cart. Integrity is silent until someone speaks, she often reminded him, and those words echoed insistently as he contemplated the board meeting ahead. Days stretched into an agonizing blur. Every shift felt like a cycle of indecision, a treadmill stripping him of progress. But today, that changed. After drawing an unsteady breath, he resolved to step away from the mop and into a role he had long avoided. The moment of reckoning was near, yet clarity washed over him. If he was going to do this, he had to prepare, to leverage what he knew, to seize the opportunity. As he scanned the hall, determination coursed through him. He was more than just a janitor, he had insight. He remembered conversations, numbers, and patterns. There was power in the knowledge he had unconsciously gathered. With a shrinking sense of anxiety, he began to formulate a plan. The meeting was approaching rapidly, and while fear gnawed at the edges of his resolve, he would not let it paralyze him. He picked up the mop once more, intent on focusing his thoughts while his body went through the familiar motions. Hour by hour, he practiced in his mind, constructing arguments and points of order, envisioning how he would stand firm. The intricacies of corporate jargon merged with his own life's narrative, creating a tapestry woven with sincerity and truth. But just as he felt the pull of confidence surge forward, a distant laugh echoed through the halls, sending a chill down his spine. The CEO and his entourage meandered through the lobby, oblivious to the turmoil surrounding them. Jake stood rooted, staring as their arrogance radiated from their every move. A new wave of doubt surged through him, threatening to dismantle the fragile determination he had forged. But there was no turning back now. The clock was ticking, and Jake knew he had only one chance to speak the truth he held. The day of reckoning approached, and as the reality of his choice enveloped him, a singular thought crystallized within him: the time had come to face the lie behind the polished facade. Yet beneath the surface of his resolve, an unsettling question remained: could he truly summon the courage to expose the hidden trap, or would fear once again bind him to silence? Jake leaned against the wall, feeling the coolness of the surface grounding him as he fought to steady the tremors within. His heart muttered a rhythm of anxiety and determination in equal measure. The scent of polished floors mingled with the distinct tang of nervous sweat, oddly comforting yet foreign, reminding him of the battles fought between silence and the truth. He focused intently on the approaching meeting, his mind fracturing the anticipation into manageable pieces, each one a potential argument he could lift and present like trophies of his newly forged resolve. He recalled Jessie's advice to speak from experience. This was his chance to rewrite the narrative of his existence. Jake had watched the movers and shakers in this corporation play their games, cloaked beneath their self-importance. What he knew about their operations now felt less like whispers and more like a clarion call for accountability. As the clock ticked on, he could hear the distant murmur of the executives assembling, laughter floating through the air. It was a stark contrast to the weight of his duty. The very walls that reflected their affluence also bore witness to the plight of those left behind in the shadows. It dawned on him he had every right to enter that room and voice what so many paid a price to suppress. No longer was he merely a witness to their corruption, he had become an involuntary participant, holding on to knowledge that trembled beneath the surface like a raft ready to launch into tumultuous waters. The gears of his mind began to turn. He crafted potential questions in real time, dissecting their deceitful practices while shaping his own narrative. What if they dismissed him? He shivered at the thought, but regret loomed larger in his psyche. The chance to act outweighed the risk of failure. With a final breath, Jake tucked away the tools of his old life, the mop and bucket now sidelined like a past he was willing to shed. Each step towards the boardroom felt more heavy and certain, a tangible step towards reclaiming his own story. As he neared the door, he paused. The words of his daughter echoed through him, a soft mantra of hope, "You can be brave, Daddy." Pushing the door open was akin to tearing down a barrier. The air shifted as he entered, charged with dividing lines drawn by privilege and influence. He could see the executives clad in sharp suits, their self-assuredness radiating around the mahogany table. For a moment, he hesitated, anger flooding him at their obliviousness to the suffering of their employees. Suddenly, an unexpected voice punctured his resolve. "Are we ready for our agenda?" The CEO's smug tone emanated authority as he waved off a retort from another executive. It confirmed the conviction building in Jake's chest, a flame ignited and fueled by indignation. All eyes shifted toward him, each face wearing its mask of indifference, searching for what a janitor could possibly contribute to their lofty discussions. But Jake's presence was unlike the inanimate objects they so casually overlooked. He started to speak, words pouring forth like water breaking through a dam, each syllable a challenge, each assertion an examination of their ethical veil. As shock spread across the table, he could see fractures beginning to form in their arrogance. Even amidst initial disbelief, there was a hint of curiosity, a hint of fear. This was his moment, and he was hyper-aware of how power could tilt. The unassuming janitor was rattling the cage. However, just when Jake expected to build upon this momentum, the CEO's icy gaze bore down on him. The brief flicker of attention was swiftly replaced by disdain. "And what do you think gives you the right to speak here?" The dismissal was more than just words, it felt like a cleaver aimed at his resolve. But Jake was undeterred. No longer could he afford to retreat into silence. The stakes were higher than ever, and the tension in the room electrified his senses. What would happen next could redefine him. And just as his thoughts spiraled to predict the immediate fallout, he realized that true courage wasn't born of glory, but through standing firm amidst hostility. There was no going back now. It was time to embrace the storm ahead before it swept him away. Yet, even on the cusp of revelation, a jarring thought gripped him: could he truly unravel what lay hidden in the smiles of those who held power? What consequences awaited him when the dust of confrontation settled? Jake's pulse raced as he stood exposed in the viper's den of corporate ambition and privilege. The CEO's question hung over him like a dark cloud, a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play. He had stepped into this moment with more than just righteousness. He had brought with him the weight of his experiences, his past, and the tireless drive for change. The room felt suffocating as he searched for words, striving to fully articulate the depth of his truth amidst their condescension. "No one has the right to speak for those who suffer in silence," he began, the tremor in his voice betraying the tension coursing through him. "I've spent years witnessing the reality behind the polished facades of this company." With each statement, he noticed the executives' expressions shifting from amusement to unease. Their scoffs, their semi-hidden smirks, all morphed into a tightening of lips and narrowed eyes. The first fracture had been made, and he decided to press on. "This company turns a blind eye," he continued, recalling the weary faces of his co-workers who struggled each day under burdens that were foreign to those seated around him. "You prioritize profits over people, and those of us cleaning the floors know it all too well." He stayed focused, the anger he felt boiling beneath a surface layer of desperation shifting toward determination. The CEO leaned forward, all pretense of indifference evaporating. "You really think your half-baked observations hold any merit?" "You're a janitor," he remarked, his disdain dripping from the syllables. It was a dismissal, yet it reverberated harshly in Jake's mind, echoing the society that had long conditioned him to feel inadequate. But beneath the hurt, Jake's resolve solidified. They wouldn't dictate his worth anymore. He had come too far and fought too hard. I was a janitor, he countered, each word imbued with strength, but that doesn't disqualify me from recognizing unethical behavior. Sometimes it takes someone on the outside to see the truth clearer than those buried in their ivory towers. The tension thickened, the room holding its breath as executives exchanged glances, searching for the appropriate counterattack. For the first time, their confidence wavered. Jake felt emboldened, a sense of clarity emerging like light filtering through dark clouds. This was his narrative now, one in which he could reclaim his identity and stand tall against the very people who aimed to diminish him. Your lavish retreats don't erase the struggles at the bottom, he pressed on, observing something shift in the energy of the room. Was it reluctance to confront the truth he was unraveling? Or simply disbelief that he dared to speak up? Either way, he pressed ahead, knowing this was a defining moment in his life. Yet, as he recalled his daughter's face, her innocent belief in his strength, he felt the void of doubt creep back in. What if his efforts fell flat? What if their power silenced him for good? He took a deep breath, grounding himself in that fear, channeling it into a final plea. For every profit margin you chase, there's a human cost. It's time to act with integrity instead of greed. But the CEO scoffed again, unfolding the tension that Jake felt gathering like knots in his stomach. You don't know the pressures we face. You cannot judge from a lowly position. His voice cut through Jake like icy wind, the arrogance palpable. The glittering conference room began to feel claustrophobic, closing in as the ambitious minds surrounding the table adjusted to Jake's boldness. Jake inhaled deeply, adrenaline propelling him into further uncharted waters of confrontation. What would be the fallout from these words? He had made a calculated move. The question now loomed large: would they respond with wrath, or was there enough crack in their armor to spark a real change? Before he could catch his breath, a moment of transformation dawned upon him, his fear morphed into an ally. I'm here to challenge you, not to belittle you, he stated, resolute. The stakes had escalated, but so had his own strength. A silence descended, heavier than before, as the eyes of the room fixed on him, awaiting a response. The challenge had been issued, the gauntlet thrown down. The executives were no longer spectators, they were now active participants in this fierce dialogue. Would they push back, or would they reconsider the very fabric of their values? And then he prepared himself for the next round of their corporate games. As the tension settled like a fog around them, Jake realized the battle was only just beginning. What he didn't yet know was how steep the path ahead would be, nor the true cost of challenging such entrenched power. As he settled into that realization, a new drumming beneath the surface began, a beat of uncertainty mingled with defiance. The silence hung like a heavy shroud, a silent cue that the next move would shape the course of this unsettling encounter. Jake's heart thundered in his chest, the urgency of the moment igniting a flicker of courage within him. He had crossed a threshold, one that brought newfound clarity to his vision of justice and equity. Yet, with every passing second, doubt crept in like an uninvited guest, reminding him of his place. They're here to protect their interests, not listen to you, a voice whispered in his mind, echoing the skepticism he had fought against for so long. But Jake's resolve pushed back. He had witnessed too much to remain silent, the truths he had uncovered nourishing a fire within him. It became essential to demonstrate not only to them but to himself that this moment was pivotal. The CEO's eyes narrowed, evaluating Jake as if he were merely an inconsequential piece on a chessboard. You think people in this room don't care? That we don't help? We donate to charity, we do outreach programs, the CEO responded, attempting to regain control. In that instance, Jake understood their dismissal reflected deeper issues, not just an unwillingness to hear him but a desperate desire to maintain their carefully constructed image. He had poked a hole in their facade, and yet they were eager to patch it up, addressing the surface rather than grappling with the underlying discontent. You think donations can excuse neglect? Jake shot back, barely holding back the intensity boiling within. You insulate yourselves from the very people who make this company thrive. You have convinced yourselves that your contributions make up for the indifference in day-to-day operations. He could feel the tremors of fear and anger pulsing through his veins, each word a declaration of his newfound resolve. Sweat beaded on his forehead, an external manifestation of the internal storm that brewed. He was not merely challenging authority, he was positioning himself within a framework that felt dangerously provocative yet exhilarating. Each heartbeat thrummed louder, reminding him of the stakes. It wasn't just about him anymore, it was about all the unseen workers who bore the weight of corporate negligence. The CFO's face darkened, brows furrowing in palpable rage. It was now clear, Jake's words were penetrating, sparking a reaction he had not anticipated. No one cares about your opinion, Jake. You risk your job with these claims, and frankly, the people you speak for don't even look up from their work to notice, he hissed, venom dripping from each syllable. The comment stung like a beehive, disturbed, a reminder of how corporate structures often drowned out the voices at the bottom. But as Jake stood there, contemplating the hard truth behind the CFO's words, he remembered the faces of those he fought for daily, their struggles morphing into a source of strength. Borrowing from that strength, he replied, perhaps the floor below is so buried in years of neglect, you wouldn't notice if they looked up. But they are there, right beneath your feet. An electric tension crackled between them, igniting sparks of both anger and curiosity. People failed to realize that confrontation often ignited growth. In this moment, Jake was no longer the janitor, he was a catalyst, positioned to force a reckoning. Yet, doubts loomed large. Could the crack he had made expand into a chasm of change? Would they see common humanity in his struggle, or would they double down, solidifying their defenses? The executives bristled, signaling a brewing storm as Jake pressed on, but he felt his voice slip back into uncertainty. If you want loyalty from your employees, it begins with them knowing they are valued. Start listening before it's too late. The stakes elevated, their reactions would dictate the path forward. Would they embark on self-reflection, or retaliate against his boldness? As the leaders shifted uncomfortably, Jake steeled himself for whatever was to come next. The meeting room hummed with potential, the battle shifted into a new phase, and Jake felt both a thrill of defiance and a profound weight of responsibility. But what he didn't know yet was whether he could withstand the backlash or spark a movement among those who toiled behind the curtains. In that charged atmosphere, the fierce dialogue neared a pivotal point, the air thick with the promise of inevitable confrontation. As he locked eyes with the CEO, Jake sensed the critical moment approaching, unaware that the ultimate test of his resolve was just around the corner. As the tension in the room escalated, Jake felt an almost tangible shift, as if the air itself had thickened to a suffocating weight. Every pair of eyes was now fixed on him, their disbelief morphing into incredulity. The CEO, momentarily taken aback, masked his surprise with a tight-lipped smile that failed to reach his eyes. It was a warning sign, a signal of wariness rather than an acknowledgement of Jake's courage. The silence that followed felt like the calm before an impending storm. Jake's heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing his mounting anxiety. He braced himself, reminding himself that even if he was merely a janitor, his voice could resonate like thunder in this room of power. He had unearthed a truth that they could neither ignore nor comfortably dismiss. But the remnants of self-doubt refused to fade entirely. The CFO's retort echoed in Jake's ears, "No one cares about your opinion." Did he dare believe otherwise? As he stood there, a surge of emotion threatened to topple his hard-fought composure. Yet, Jake's internal battle was interrupted by an unexpected flicker of determination. Their condescension fed the fire inside him, their ignorance only solidified his resolve. "Listen," Jake continued, forcing his voice to remain steady. "You might hide behind layers of prestige and power, but you can't claim to understand the heartbeat of your company when you're isolated from its rhythm." Here, he was not merely voicing discontent, he was speaking a language that should have resonated with them, but had long been drowned out by the jingle of profits and the din of board meetings. The CEO's expression began to harden, and Jake recognized the telltale signs of an impending rebuttal. Each second pulsed by, the weight of his words dangling in the air like a fragile glass ornament, ready to shatter against the truth's harshness. "Are you really suggesting that I, the CEO, started?" But Jake cut him off, his decisions crystallizing in an urgent moment of clarity. "No, I'm asking you to reconsider what leadership really means," he interrupted, the conviction in his voice bolder now. "You may think you're looking out for us, but your actions speak otherwise. This isn't just about employees, this is about people, actual lives that count on you making the right choices." Each assertion became a sculptor's chisel to the granite of their pretense. A brief flicker of hesitation crossed the faces around the table, perhaps a glimpse of self-awareness. But just as quickly, Jake saw the second-guessing dissipate, replaced by hardened defenses. The status quo was a formidable fortress, and he was an unarmed intruder within its walls. "That sentiment is cute, but naive," the CFO countered sharply. "Everyone in this room has worked hard to be where we are. You're in no position to lecture us on leadership." Jake felt the sting of his words. How could they define hard work when they had been perched high above the struggles of those beneath them? But he couldn't let their dismissal divert him from the path he was carving. He had taken the first step and couldn't falter now. He had to maintain the momentum, even if he risked everything. "I'm not here to fit neatly into your understanding of the hierarchy," Jake replied, leaning into the vulnerability of his truth. "I'm here to unveil the implications of your choices." The word choices lingered, hovering like a pendulum teetering between accountability and blame. The CEO's gaze was icy, but Jake could see flickers of uncertainty beginning to mar the veneer of confidence they wore. In that moment, he felt a rush of exhilaration, as if the earth beneath him had dared to shift. Perhaps this conversation could catalyze change, even if he was unsure of the outcome. Just then, the door swung open, and a young woman in a crisp blazer entered, holding a tablet filled with documents. The executives turned, momentarily distracted. Jake seized the opportunity. This wasn't a time to back down. "While you review those figures," he pressed on, "consider the statistics of employee turnover, morale, and satisfaction that will inevitably hit your bottom line. Unless you're willing to engage with us, truly engage, this company won't thrive, not in a world where transparency matters more than prestige." The room vibrated with tension, a sweltering mixture of escalating anger and reluctant intrigue. Jake could sense the shift happening before him, but he knew it was only the beginning. He was no longer just a janitor, he was pushing boundaries, digging deeper. As the tension thickened anew, he realized he had uncovered a part of himself he never knew existed: an advocate, a challenger to authority. And just as he locked eyes with the CEO once again, a new kind of fear settled in. Could he maintain this fight, or would the very system he challenged devour him? The stakes had never been higher. The turning point lay ahead, but the path to transformation crisscrossed with potential downfall. Only time would reveal if his voice could echo loud enough to evoke change, or if it would simply fade away into the cacophony of corporate indifference. Jake took a deep breath, preparing for whatever was set to unfold next. The stage was set, and the real confrontation had only just begun. Jake could feel the weight of his words pressing against the walls of the boardroom, but he didn't allow fear to cripple him. He was positive that something had shifted. The heat of confrontation felt electric, and for the first time, he sensed that the executives recognized a threat in the vulnerability he wore like armor. He glanced around, noting the slight unease creeping into their postures. Maybe it was because they had never truly faced this aggressive honesty, nor had they been challenged in such a direct manner. "Who invited you here, anyway?" The CFO sneered, attempting to reassert dominance. "Just because you happen to have a microphone doesn't mean we're going to validate your opinions." Jake clenched his fists at his sides, fighting the urge to succumb to the familiar shame and anger that had often dictated his experiences. He was redefining the narrative. "That's exactly the problem," he shot back, voice rising with conviction. "You're so used to speaking at us, above us, that you've closed yourselves off from understanding the reality we face every day. I'm not here to entertain your dismissal. I'm here to ask for what is right for us all." Using the small stash of courage he had gathered, Jake noticed the CEO's steady gaze shifting, a crack in his impenetrable facade. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but it was there. A shift. The vastness of their collective ignorance had begun to show slight fractures, and Jake had to capitalize on it. I'm asking you to have the same conviction that you think you possess as leaders. Stakeholders see your numbers, they don't see the people whose lives depend on your decisions. You owe it to us to be honest about the consequences of those choices. Each word felt like a blow to the shield they had built. Now the air was taut with a mix of tension and curiosity. Heads turned, some murmured quietly amongst themselves. It was a flicker of urgency, a creeping realization that perhaps they should be listening not just hearing. Jake pressed forward. The young woman who had interrupted her name surfaced from corners of his mind. Laura was glued to the display in her hands, then returned her eyes to him. You have to understand, she piped up, her voice small but clear. I've been working on compiling employee feedback. It's not all about numbers, it's about personal experiences. Her words landed like a strategic strike. Jake caught her gaze, surprised but grateful for her solidarity amidst the storm. She was a reminder of the less visible voices, those who often went unheard. Exactly. He exclaimed, unable to mask his breath of relief. We're not just resources, we're human beings who have dedicated years to making this company what it is today. You need to look past the spreadsheets and start listening to the stories behind those numbers. The surrounding executives fidgeted as Jake continued, feeling emboldened by the momentum. Offering the CEO's glimpses of the sacrifices and struggles of his co-workers became paramount. Jake's mind sharpened, recalling particular struggles from the employees under the pressure of demanding targets and unrealistic expectations. Then, suddenly, the CEO interrupted him, drawing everyone's attention back to him. And what do you suggest we do? Start changing things based on employee complaints? His voice dripped with disdain Jake had grown all too familiar with. The confrontation spiraled, but the raw determination coursed through Jake's veins, urging him to respond thoughtfully. Yes. Do not dismiss the feedback. Lead by example. Be willing to reshape the mission with us in mind. We can change the culture here, make it something that truly resonates with people. Silence followed his words, hanging heavily. Each executive wore a mask of contemplation clouded by skepticism. Jake could sense that they were wrestling with their traditional models, plagued by the prospect of genuine change. But with every connection he ignited, Jake knew there was still the threat of backlash looming overhead. What if they dismissed him completely? What if retaliation came for this audacity? The thought churned uneasily in his gut. As the moments ticked by, he felt something stir within him, an unyielding belief that change was not only possible but essential. And just as hope began to swell, the CEO's voice sliced through like a knife. You think you're advocating for change, Jake? Let us see if you're prepared to deal with the consequences. The room crackled with uncertainty, rattling Jake's newfound resolve. What consequences awaited him? As his heart raced and his mind grappled with this unsettling question, he realized the truth: this fight was just beginning, and he had no idea how deeply it would test the limits of his courage and integrity. Jake stood firm, heat pooling in his chest. The moment of commitment hovered over him, ripe with urgency. I'm willing to take that risk, he challenged, feeling his voice both tremble and strengthen with each word. As he locked eyes with the CEO, recognition sparked within him. But before he could contemplate it further, the ensuing dialogue promised to take them down an uncharted path. It was the only way to break through the barriers that had shackled him for so long. Jake's heart raced, a melody of adrenaline mixing with the weight of anticipation. The atmosphere was thick, expectations teetering on the edge of a precipice. As he held the CEO's gaze, he felt as though the room was in suspended animation, all eyes piercing through him, assessing the veracity of his resolve. A faint waver in the CEO's eyes sparked a glimmer of hope within Jake. Could this staunch guardian of tradition be ready to reconsider, even for a moment? This was hardly a shared moment of understanding but rather a challenge he fully intended to seize. Yet the thought of potential repercussions niggled at the back of his mind, always lurking, casting a shadow over his confidence. Consequences, Jake echoed quietly, turning the word over in his mind like a stone held too long in his palm. Consequences could mean demotion, ostracization, or worse. Yet within that possibility lay the seeds of change not only for the company but for himself as well. He shouldered the gravity of the moment, infusing his voice with a resolve he hardly recognized. "I think change is always met with resistance," he replied, "but if you're convinced of your vision for the company, why should you fear what it might become? If we can craft a workplace built on mutual respect, perhaps we can even innovate beyond what current metrics suggest because innovation thrives in collaboration, not isolation." His words broke like waves against the cold shore of corporate rigidity. A slight murmur swept through the room as some executives leaned closer, clearly intrigued. Yet it also gave rise to an uncomfortable tension, as a few remained entrenched, stationed firmly within their doubting fortress. The CFO crossed his arms defiantly, yet even he couldn't suppress the flicker of curiosity. "You think a few heartfelt anecdotes will sway bottom-line-driven decisions?" "No," Jake countered, feeling the ground shift beneath him. "I'm not talking about anecdotes. I'm talking about harnessing our real collective experiences and using them to influence our direction. What if those statistical trends you lean on so heavily could be elevated by understanding the people who drive them? Imagine the goodwill that could emerge, loyalty with each decision, stronger morale, improved productivity, fewer turnarounds. We will invest in the employees, and through them, we invest in the company itself." Every fiber in Jake urged him to break through their skepticism, finding ways to tug at an openness he sensed, however faint. It was a thin barrier that could be shattered with genuine connection. "Your numbers can tell you one version of the truth," he continued, "but the stories are where the raw, unfiltered truth lies. I'm not here just to voice complaints, I'm here to connect what we do to why we do it." The CEO leaned back, arms folded tightly, the muscles in his jaw tightening as he absorbed Jake's fervor. Defiance wrestled with intrigue, his interest piqued by Jake's blend of vulnerability and assertion. "I dare you," the CEO eventually said, breaking the silence that had enveloped them, "to come back with a comprehensive proposal for how we might work together to implement these changes and elevate employee engagement." Jake barely had time to process the challenge. "I will," he committed, the resolve igniting within him like a flashpoint. But he was immediately confronted by a rush of self-doubt, the whispers of memory echoing past failures. What if this time was different? What if he could actually make a dent in a rigid structure? As he exited the boardroom, the gray clouds of apprehension continued to rumble inside him. There was so much at stake. His mind raced with how to shape his thoughts into a proposal that would carry weight, knowing he was now tethered to an outcome that could either liberate or doom his aspirations. A flicker of determination surged. This was his opportunity to tap into hidden strengths, standing firm against the currents of doubt. Lost in this whirlwind, Jake paused outside the door. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges beyond the boardroom's walls. But the outcome mattered less than his determination to wade into this fight. As he moved towards his desk, he felt an awareness stirring inside him, a newfound clarity emerging from the shadows of his past experiences. What strengths would he uncover along this journey? The stakes were higher and the repercussions painfully real. The moment of truth lingered in the air as he thought, can I turn my fears into fuel? And with that question settled in his mind, he resolved to push forward. But as he stepped back into the routine of the office, the realization struck him it was more than just a corporate battle now. This was about self-discovery intertwined with professional growth. How would he balance those two roles without losing himself? Would he even recognize who he was when this storm faded? And just as he opened his notes to begin drafting his proposal, the phone rang like thunder, signaling a new twist that might change everything. An unexpected call from his estranged mentor. What advice could await him? Could it change the tone of his crusade? Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever came next. He grabbed the phone, still thrumming with the aftershocks of his conversation with the CEO, and almost hesitated before answering. It had been years since he had last spoken to Mr. Whittaker, the mentor who had once believed in his potential. Now, would the echoes of the past provide clarity, or just stir up old wounds? "Jake," the familiar voice came through with a mix of warmth and authority. "I heard you were working on something big. I had to reach out. You know, it's been a long time since you turned heads in that boardroom. It sounds like you're at the edge of something profound." His mentor's confidence felt like a lifeline tossed into the turbulent sea of Jake's self-doubt. "I just made a pitch to the CEO about transforming our company culture. He challenged me to create a comprehensive proposal. I have no idea where to start." Mr. Whittaker paused, the silence heavy with expectation. "What do you want from this? What change do you genuinely want to foster?" The question struck deeper than Jake anticipated. Digging into his own desires, he realized he wasn't just defending ideas, he yearned for an environment where employees didn't feel like cogs in a machine. He wanted to ignite a revolution that would lead to real collaboration. "I want to pave the way for genuine connections," he confessed. "I want to show that valuing employees isn't just humane, it's essential for growth." "Then begin with that vision," Mr. Whittaker advised. "Craft a narrative. Start with genuine experiences and weave them into a foundation that can empower others. You're not just rewriting policies, you're reshaping lives." Jake's mind flickered with excitement at those words. This was more than just a mission, it was a calling to uplift others through understanding and respect. But then, a dark cloud crept back into his thoughts. How could he turn this vision into a concrete proposal? Avoiding those lurking doubts, he asked, "What if the executives reject it? Or even worse, what if they see me as naive?" Remember this, the most transformative ideas are often dismissed at first. "It's your task to be relentless and unwavering," his mentor reminded him. "Use what you have. You possess insights that no one else does. How the culture impacts productivity, morale, and creativity. Frame it around not just numbers, but human impact." Jake felt a surge of determination. This was not just about influencing the executive suite, it was about his professional rebirth. "You're right," he said, feeling the fire of inspiration slowly building within. "I'll start by collecting stories from my co-workers' real accounts of how the current environment has affected them. Those narratives will ground my proposal. I can create surveys, hold discussions, whatever it takes." "Exactly," Mr. Whittaker replied, enthusiasm palpable. "Let their voices resonate through your proposal. Your authenticity will be your strongest ally. Just don't forget, change is a marathon, not a sprint. Embed your aspirations in actionable steps." As Jake hung up, the reality of what lay ahead washed over him like a cold wave. He needed to inspire a hesitant boardroom, showcasing both the emotional narratives and the mostly quantitative impact of their collective experiences. He envisioned workshops, testimonials, and innovative brainstorming sessions grounded in real-life stories, a new labyrinth of possibilities unfolding before him. But what if his senior colleagues were as resistant as he feared? What if they saw him as merely romanticizing the emotional aspect of work? Those thoughts gnawed at him, the doubt creeping back in, taunting him. Standing at the crossroads of fear and ambition, he was determined to rise above. Jake turned back to his desk, ideation swirling in his mind. But just before he could jot down ideas, a shadow crossed the threshold of his office. Not Missy, his reliable assistant, but the CFO, the picture of skepticism in his freshly pressed suit. "I need to talk, Jake," the CFO declared, arms crossed defensively. "This proposal you're drafting, it better be rooted in reality and business sense, not just a feel-good scheme." Jake's stomach twisted, caught between instinctual defensiveness and a desire to remain calm. This confrontation could either seal his rebirth or plunge him into despair. He took a steadying breath. "I assure you, it will be grounded in numbers alongside human experiences that drive those numbers. This isn't a naive mission, it's a calculated approach to enhance workplace dynamics. But would the CFO accept that? Or was this the point where Jake's vision would either soar or shatter? Jake braced himself for the intense dialogue ahead, doubts mingling with a flicker of hope, leaving the ultimate outcome hanging in the balance. In this moment, he recognized the visceral truth: his professional growth hinged not just on his ideas, but also on his ability to navigate challenges and confront skeptics head-on. As he prepared to engage in this confrontation, it dawned on him that the real question was no longer just about crafting a proposal, it was about challenging the very foundations of his own resolve. Would he rise to the occasion, or let the waves of doubt pull him under? And just as they began to engage, a notification pinged on his phone. Another unexpected twist awaited him, opening a door to possibilities he hadn't imagined. As Jake stepped into his office the next morning, the usual hum of machinery was drowned out by the powerful crescendo of possibility surging through him. He had reflected on his conversation with Mr. Whitaker, allowing it to crystallize his vision for change. It was not just an idea confined to paperwork, it was a mission to humanize the workplace. Equipped with burning resolve, Jake meticulously organized his thoughts and reached out to colleagues, initiating a series of discussions around their experiences within the company. Each conversation became a heartbeat to his proposal, distilling personal stories that articulated a palpable urgency, the need for a deeper connection between management and workers. By gathering these narratives, he felt their collective strength fill the room, propelling him forward. No longer just a janitor collecting complaints, he was a storyteller weaving together a tapestry of countless silenced voices yearning for acknowledgement and respect. This journey of discovery was transforming Jake from an observer to an advocate, and with each story told, he could feel his confidence solidifying. As he worked diligently on his comprehensive proposal, Jake ensured that it wasn't merely about statistics or grievances. He cited cases where individual efforts had led to profound improvements in morale and productivity, proving that investing in people bore substantial returns. The groundwork he laid now felt like a vibrant mosaic reflecting wisdom, ambition, courage, and humanness, everything he wanted to represent. Days morphed into weeks as he relentlessly fine-tuned every piece of the proposal, remaining steadfast in the face of skepticism from the CFO and others who had long resisted change. Yet behind the steel walls of adversity, he felt a surge of satisfaction each time he transformed fear and doubt into action. When the day finally arrived for him to present, Jake's heart raced. He entered the boardroom, clutching his meticulously crafted presentation, now adorned with heartfelt testimonials and meaningful data that illustrated a clear path to improved workplace dynamics. The air crackled with tension, and he could sense the executives sizing him up, their skepticism palpable. Without faltering, he commenced his pitch. "Today, I'm not just presenting numbers, I'm revealing the voices behind them," he declared, his voice steady and firm. He spoke passionately about the genuine stories that formed a gateway for understanding the emotional landscape within the office. He detailed how fostering an empathetic culture could usher in higher employee satisfaction, lower turnover rates, and eventually a more prosperous bottom line. As he laid out the evidence, he took momentary glances around the room, recognizing faint flickers of acknowledgement in the eyes of some people who had once regarded him as inconsequential. Jake concluded the presentation with a heartfelt assembly of stories that resonated with his colleagues, leaving an indelible mark on the boardroom walls steeped in corporate tradition. "I'm advocating not just for change, but for the people who are the backbone of this company. Alone, our voices may be quiet, but together they are a chorus demanding to be heard." Silence hung in the air for a moment, only disrupted by the hand-clapping of Laura, the young woman who had previously supported him. As her applause cascaded through the room, it instigated a ripple effect that swept through the other executives, a realization that something powerful had shifted. The CEO, arms crossed, softened his expression as he addressed Jake for the first time with sincerity. "You've presented thought-provoking insights, Jake. Change, even positive change, takes courage. Are you prepared to help lead this initiative?" Jake's heart soared. Not only had he successfully articulated his vision, but he now had the chance to play a critical role in that very transformation he envisioned. "I am ready to collaborate on implementing strategies that will bridge the gap between employees and management." I'll ensure that our processes are designed to lift everyone involved. The essence of Jake's journey morphed into a powerful affirmation of his resilience, redefining not just his role within the company but changing his self-perception entirely. He had traded the weight of anonymity for the strength of visibility, stepping into a fearless advocacy against silence. As the meeting concluded, applause erupted, an unexpected legacy of change echoing in place of past neglect. Jake couldn't help but smile. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment enveloping him, intertwining with the threads of the respect he had long sought for himself and his co-workers. From this moment forward, his path was clear. Jake had not only conquered fear, he had become a beacon of change, ready to illuminate the lives of many more employees clamoring for acknowledgement. With newfound confidence, he understood that integrity was never meant to be silent, but instead the very fire that propels transformation. And as he filed out of the boardroom, armed with the trust he had cultivated, Jake realized there was no greater achievement than the one that lies in doing right both for himself and for every person he worked alongside. The journey of an unseen janitor had just begun. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm because it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your insights matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.